In a distant future, on a planet far from Earth, there was a grand city named Zara. Once full of bustling streets and shining towers, it now lay in ruins after a terrible disaster. The city's inhabitants, once vibrant and numerous, had vanished without a trace. Among the few survivors was a young human girl named Lily. She had been left behind. Lily wandered through the empty streets, her heart pounding with fear. The city's once bright lights were now dark, and the sounds of life had been replaced by eerie silence. She clutched her tattered jacket tightly around her, trying to ward off the cold that seemed to seep into her bones. Her once neat clothes were now dirty and torn from days of searching for food and shelter. The disaster had come swiftly and without warning. One moment, Lily was surrounded by her friends and family, and the next, they were all gone. She remembered the chaos and confusion, the way people had screamed and run, leaving her behind. It was as if she had been forgotten, left in the middle of a nightmare with no way to wake up. As she wandered, Lily noticed the city's empty buildings. Storefronts with shattered windows and houses with doors hanging off their hinges stood as silent witnesses to the catastrophe. Her stomach rumbled with hunger and her throat was dry. She had managed to find some canned food in a store, but it was not enough to fill her hunger for long. Lily had tried to find others, calling out for help and searching through the rubble, but there was no answer. The silence was oppressive, and the weight of loneliness pressed heavily on her shoulders. Each day blended into the next, and she began to lose track of time. The days were long, and the nights were filled with the fear of what might be lurking in the darkness. One day, as she explored the outskirts of the city, Lily came across a makeshift camp. It was a small area with some old blankets and discarded supplies. She hoped it might be a sign of other survivors, but the camp was deserted. She found a few cans of food and a half-empty bottle of water, but there were no signs of life. Lily sat down on the cold ground, feeling the weight of her situation. She had tried to stay hopeful, but each passing day made her feel more and more alone. She thought about her family and friends, wondering if they were safe somewhere or if they were lost like she was. The feeling of abandonment was overwhelming. As she looked up at the darkening sky, Lily made a silent promise to herself. She would not give up. She had to find a way to survive, to find others who might be out there. The city was vast, and she knew there were dangers, but she had no choice but to keep moving. With a deep breath, she stood up and began to walk again. Her steps were slow but determined. The city was a maze of crumbling buildings and shadowy alleys, but Lily had no other choice but to explore. Each day was a struggle, but she clung to the hope that somewhere out there she would find help, or at least a sign that she was not completely alone. Lily's journey had just begun, and the challenges ahead seemed daunting. But in the midst of her despair, there was a flicker of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, someone or something would come to her aid in this desolate place. The city of Zara was a maze of broken buildings and dark alleyways. Lily had been wandering for hours, her feet aching and her stomach growling with hunger. She had ventured further from the city's heart, hoping to find some hidden resources or perhaps another sign of life. The deserted streets were unsettling, and every shadow seemed to hold a hidden danger. As dusk fell, Lily's sense of isolation grew stronger. The fading light made the city appear even more desolate. Her flashlight flickered, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. Lily had just turned a corner when she heard a soft rustling sound behind her. Her heart skipped a beat, and she spun around, eyes wide with fear. Emerging from the darkness was a figure unlike anything she had ever seen. It was an alien, but not like the ones she had heard about in stories. This one was massive, with a muscular build and an air of raw power. Its skin was a deep dark green, and its eyes glowed with a fierce intensity. The alien's appearance was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Lily froze, her breath catching in her throat. She wanted to run, but her legs felt like lead. The alien, noticing her fear, did not advance. Instead, it stood still, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The creature's gaze was intense, but it did not show any signs of aggression. For a few tense moments, neither of them moved. Lily could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she stared at the alien. It had a strange, almost regal air about it, with a posture that suggested it was both confident and commanding. Despite its fearsome appearance, there was something in its eyes that seemed almost compassionate. The alien made a low, rumbling sound, a noise that was unfamiliar to Lily. It was not threatening, but rather seemed to be a form of communication. Lily swallowed hard and took a cautious step back. She was unsure whether to run or stay, but something in the alien's demeanor made her hesitate. To her surprise, the alien did not pursue her. Instead, it reached into a bag slung over its shoulder and pulled out a small bundle of food. It placed the bundle on the ground a few feet away from Lily and then stepped back, giving her space. The gesture was confusing and unexpected. Lily stared at the food, her stomach protesting loudly. She glanced back at the alien, who remained still, watching her with those glowing eyes. It was clear that the creature was offering her help, but she didn't understand why. After a moment of hesitation, she carefully approached the bundle and inspected it. It was simple food, dried fruits and nuts, enough to ease her hunger. With trembling hands, Lily picked up the bundle and looked at the alien again. The creature's eyes seemed to soften, and it gave a slight nod. Lily realized that this alien was not here to harm her. Instead, it was offering her aid in a time of desperate need. Lily felt a rush of relief mixed with confusion. She took a small bite of the food and looked up at the alien, who remained still and watchful. There was a strange sense of peace in the air, a break from the constant fear that had been her companion for so long. This encounter marked the beginning of an unexpected connection between Lily and the alien, a connection that would change both their lives in ways they could not yet imagine. The days that followed were a blend of exhaustion and relief for Lily. The food provided by the alien had helped her regain some strength, but the city remained a daunting and lonely place. Each day she ventured out, searching for more resources and hoping for a sign of life. Despite her efforts, she still felt the weight of abandonment pressing heavily on her. One afternoon, as Lily scavenged through an old grocery store, she heard a faint noise outside. Her heart raced with anxiety. She was not sure if it was a threat or a potential rescue. Steeling herself, she moved carefully towards the source of the sound. As she peeked out, she saw the familiar figure of the alien, the Primal, standing near the entrance of the store. At first, Lily was hesitant. The alien had helped her once, but she wasn't sure if she could trust it completely. The Primal's eyes met hers, and he gave a reassuring nod. In his hands, he held a bundle of supplies, more food, water, and even some medical supplies. He placed the bundle on the ground and then stepped back, giving her the space to approach. Lily watched the Primal from a distance, her mind racing with questions. Why was this creature helping her? What did it want in return? Despite her fears, the Primal's actions spoke of genuine concern. She could see it in his body language, the way he stood guard as she examined the supplies, the way his eyes followed her with a mix of curiosity and care. As she approached the bundle, Lily found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. She carefully picked up the food and water, noting the quality of the supplies. It was clear that the Primal had not just gathered anything, but had chosen items that would be truly useful. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she took a sip of the water, the cool liquid refreshing her parched throat. The Primal watched her from the entrance, his gaze steady but not intrusive. Lily sensed a silent agreement between them. He was offering help without asking for anything in return. It was a gesture of kindness that seemed almost out of place in this harsh, abandoned world. Over the next few days, the Primal continued to appear at various locations around the city, always with supplies. Lily had begun to recognize the patterns in his visits. Each time, he would drop off food, water, or other useful items, and then vanish back into the shadows. Lily tried to catch a glimpse of him more often, but he always remained elusive, appearing only when she was alone. This regular assistance allowed Lily to start making plans. She used the supplies to create a small, makeshift camp in one of the safer buildings she had found. It was not much, but it was a secure place where she could rest without constantly fearing for her safety. The Primal's help made it possible for her to focus on survival rather than just immediate needs. One evening, as she sat by a small fire, Lily found herself thinking about the Primal. She wondered about his past and why he had chosen to help her. There was a sense of mystery surrounding him, but she couldn't deny the comfort his actions brought. For the first time since the disaster, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. She realized that even in a world where she had been abandoned, there was still kindness and unexpected help. As she prepared for another night in her makeshift camp, Lily looked out into the darkness, feeling a mix of gratitude and curiosity. The Primal had become an unexpected ally in her struggle for survival, and she couldn't help but wonder what the future might hold with him in her life. Lily's camp had become a small haven amidst the chaos of the abandoned city. With the Primal's help, she had managed to secure enough supplies to feel a bit more comfortable. She no longer spent every waking moment in fear of what might happen next. Instead, she could focus on small routines that gave her a sense of normalcy. One evening, as Lily sorted through some of the supplies the Primal had left her, she heard a faint rustling sound outside her camp. She tensed, her instincts on high alert. But instead of a threat, it was the Primal who emerged from the shadows. He seemed more relaxed than usual, his posture less guarded. Lily was curious, but also hesitant. She had come to rely on the Primal's help, but knew little about him. Tonight, however, he seemed to be making an effort to communicate more openly. He approached her campfire and sat down a short distance away, as if inviting her to join him. After a moment of hesitation, Lily took a seat near the fire, keeping a cautious eye on the Primal. He placed a small device on the ground between them. It looked like a simple projector. With a few clicks, the device hummed to life, projecting images onto a nearby wall. Lily watched in awe as a series of images and videos played out. The images showed scenes from a time before the disaster, depicting the Primal's own world. Lily saw lush landscapes, vibrant cities, and what appeared to be a grand and powerful society. The Primal's people were depicted in these scenes, leading and thriving. She could tell that they were a proud and strong race. As the images continued, the story became more somber. Lily saw scenes of conflict and turmoil. The Primal's people were shown being forced out of their homes, facing betrayal, and eventually being cast out of their own society. It was clear that the Primal had once held a significant position of power and respect, but had been driven away. The images were followed by a message, spoken in the Primal's own voice. Lily listened carefully as he spoke of his past, his fall from grace, and his subsequent exile. The Primal had been a leader, admired by his people, but had been accused of crimes he did not commit. His own kin had turned against him, and he had been forced to live in isolation, far from the life he once knew. Lily's heart went out to him. She had seen the Primal as a formidable and mysterious figure, but now she saw the depth of his pain and struggle. He was not just a guardian or a helper. He was a being who had faced profound loss and injustice. His help towards her now made more sense. It was not just an act of kindness, but a way for him to make amends for the wrongs done to him. With the truth laid bare, Lily felt a new sense of connection to the Primal. They were both victims of circumstances beyond their control, struggling to find their way in a world that had turned against them. She looked at him with new eyes, understanding that his actions were driven by empathy and a desire to help someone in need, much like he had once hoped for himself. The Primal's story had changed Lily's perspective. She realized that, despite their differences, they shared a common bond of loss and resilience. As the fire crackled and the night grew quiet, Lily and the Primal sat together, silently acknowledging their newfound understanding. In that moment, they were no longer just a lost girl and a mysterious alien. They were two souls finding solace in each other's company amidst the wreckage of their worlds. The bond between Lily and the Primal had grown stronger. With each passing day, Lily felt more secure in her makeshift camp. The supplies left by the Primal ensured she had enough to eat and drink, and their shared understanding brought a sense of companionship. Despite the desolate surroundings, the Primal's presence made Lily feel less alone. One morning, as the sun's weak light filtered through the broken windows of her shelter, Lily was busy sorting through her supplies when she heard a low, rumbling noise. It was unlike anything she had heard before, an ominous sound that sent shivers down her spine. The noise grew louder, and she could feel the vibrations under her feet. Panic surged through her. She knew that something was coming, and it didn't sound like it was friendly. She quickly gathered her few belongings and readied herself to leave her camp. Just as she was about to step out, the Primal appeared at the entrance, his face marked with concern. He approached her, and she could see the urgency in his eyes. Without needing to exchange words, they both understood the gravity of the situation. The Primal motioned for her to follow him. Lily nodded, grabbing her flashlight and a small bag of essentials. They left the camp and moved towards the source of the noise. As they ventured out, the noise became clearer, a massive mechanical sound that grew increasingly deafening. Lily and the Primal made their way through the crumbling streets, the tension in the air palpable. The Primal led the way, his sharp senses guiding them through the maze of debris. They reached a vantage point on a high rooftop. From there, Lily saw what was causing the disturbance. A large, heavily armored vehicle was moving through the city, its massive treads crushing everything in its path. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, with a sleek, menacing design and a trail of destruction following it. The vehicle was part of a new force that had arrived in Zara. As Lily watched, she saw other smaller machines and drones accompanying it, scanning the area with bright, searching lights. The city was no longer just an abandoned ruin. It had become a target for a new threat. The Primal's face was tense as he observed the scene. He explained through gestures that this was an advanced patrol sent by a powerful faction that had recently gained control of nearby regions. Their mission was to clear out any remaining life forms and secure the area. Lily's heart sank. The presence of such a force meant that their sanctuary was no longer safe. Realizing the danger, Lily and the Primal needed to act quickly. They had to find a new safe place away from the patrols and their relentless search. The Primal led her to an underground tunnel he had discovered earlier, a hidden passage that would allow them to evade detection. They descended into the darkness of the tunnel, the sounds of the patrols growing fainter above them. The tunnel was damp and musty, but it offered them temporary refuge. As they walked through the dimly lit passage, Lily could see the determination in the Primal's eyes. He was not only protecting her, but also fighting for his own survival. The tunnel led them to an old, abandoned maintenance area beneath the city. It was a dark and grimy space, but it was safe for now. They set up a new temporary camp, the Primal working to make the area as secure as possible. Lily could see the stress in his movements, but she knew he was doing everything he could to keep them safe. As they settled into their new hiding place, Lily felt a mix of fear and hope. The new threat was daunting, but with the Primal by her side, she felt a renewed sense of determination. They were facing an uncertain future, but together they were prepared to confront the dangers that lay ahead. The days in the underground maintenance area were a stark contrast to the chaos of the city above. The darkness of the tunnels provided a temporary reprieve from the constant threat of the patrols. Lily and the Primal adapted to their new surroundings, their days marked by a routine of survival and vigilance. Despite the grim conditions, a sense of camaraderie began to grow between them. Lily noticed that the Primal, though initially distant and guarded, was becoming more open. His once stern demeanor softened, and he started to communicate with her more. They shared stories and experiences, finding solace in their mutual understanding. One evening, as they sat around a small makeshift fire they had managed to light using scavenged materials, Lily and the Primal exchanged their stories. The Primal spoke of his world with a deep sense of loss, describing the grandeur of his once great civilization and the pain of being cast out. His voice carried a mix of pride and sorrow as he recounted his past. Lily listened intently, feeling a deep connection to his story. She shared her own experiences, her life before the disaster, and the challenges she had faced since. The act of opening up to each other brought them closer, bridging the gap between their vastly different lives. It was a moment of mutual vulnerability where they both found comfort in their shared struggles. As the days passed, Lily began to notice the small ways in which the Primal showed his growing trust and affection. He would occasionally bring her items he thought might be useful or simply check in on her well-being. His actions were subtle but spoke volumes about his regard for her. Lily, in turn, started to appreciate the Primal's presence more deeply. She realized how much she relied on his strength and wisdom to navigate the dangers they faced. One night, as they huddled together to keep warm, Lily found herself reflecting on their journey. The Primal's earlier mystery had transformed into a sense of companionship. She could see the Primal as more than just a protector. He was a friend who had stood by her in her darkest times. They had started to develop routines together, finding ways to make their underground hideout more livable. Lily would scavenge for supplies while the Primal worked on improving their defenses. They collaborated on making the space more comfortable, using whatever resources they could find. The small improvements they made to their living conditions became symbols of their growing bond. One day, as they worked together on reinforcing their shelter, Lily caught the Primal looking at her with a look of quiet admiration. She smiled and said, "You know, we make a pretty good team." The Primal's response was a soft rumble of agreement, and he gave her a small, genuine smile, a rare sight that spoke of his gratitude and growing affection. Their connection continued to deepen, and Lily found herself feeling more secure and hopeful. The Primal's presence provided a sense of stability in a world that had become increasingly unpredictable. Together they faced the dangers of their environment with a renewed sense of purpose. As they settled into their routines, Lily and the Primal's relationship evolved from mere survival partners to true allies. Their shared experiences and mutual support forged a bond that was both strong and comforting. In the midst of their struggles, they found a sense of belonging in each other, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there could be light found in companionship and trust. Life in the underground maintenance area had become somewhat routine for Lily and the Primal. Their bond had strengthened, and they had settled into a rhythm of cooperation and mutual support. But the threat of the patrols above never fully receded, and their situation remained precarious. They knew they needed to find additional allies to increase their chances of survival. One morning, the group's numbers and experience provided additional support, while Lily and the Primal brought new strategies and resources to the table. The combined efforts helped them create a more secure base of operations and increase their chances of avoiding the patrols. As they worked together, Lily and the Primal felt a renewed sense of hope. They were no longer alone in their struggle. The presence of allies brought a new dynamic to their fight for survival, and the promise of a united effort against the common threat offered a glimmer of optimism in their harsh reality. Their newfound allies were not just survivors, they were partners in a shared mission to reclaim some semblance of stability and safety in a world that had become increasingly hostile. Together, they faced the challenges ahead with a united front, each step bringing them closer to a future where they could thrive rather than merely survive. The alliance between Lily, the Primal, and their new group of survivors had strengthened their resolve. Together, they had fortified their base, gathered resources, and prepared for the increasing threat of the patrols. The final confrontation they had feared was now imminent. One evening, as the sun set and darkness settled over the city, Lily and the Primal gathered the group. They had received word that a massive patrol was heading their way, determined to clear out any remaining survivors. The time had come to face this threat head-on. The group was nervous but determined. Lily addressed them, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We've worked hard to get to this point. We know what's coming, and we need to stand together. We've faced danger before, and we can do it again. Let's make sure this is a fight they'll remember." The Primal, standing beside Lily, nodded in agreement. His presence was a reassuring reminder of their strength. The group dispersed to take their positions, each member readying their weapons and securing their defensive positions around the base. As night fell, the sounds of the approaching patrol grew louder. The distant rumble of their vehicles and the buzz of their drones could be heard in the stillness of the night. Lily and the Primal moved to the front lines, where the most intense part of the battle was expected to take place. The patrol appeared as dark silhouettes against the backdrop of the city. Massive armored vehicles and smaller drones swept through the streets, their lights scanning for any sign of life. The group's defensive positions were hidden but well prepared. The first wave of the patrol came into view. The survivors fired their weapons, targeting the drones and the vehicles as they advanced. The Primal, with his immense strength and skill, engaged the enemy forces directly, his actions swift and precise. Lily moved among the group, coordinating their efforts and ensuring that everyone remained focused and calm. The battle was fierce. The patrol was well-equipped and relentless, but the survivors fought with a fierce determination born from their struggle and hope. The Primal's strength was a critical advantage, as he dismantled enemy machines and protected the group from the heavy fire. Despite their best efforts, the patrol pressed forward, their numbers and firepower overwhelming. Lily and the Primal realized that they needed a new strategy to turn the tide of the battle. They quickly devised a plan to use the terrain to their advantage. Lily and a few others set up traps and diversionary tactics, drawing some of the patrol's forces into ambushes. The Primal led a coordinated assault on the remaining vehicles, using his agility and power to disable them. The group's unity and ingenuity began to shift the balance. As the battle raged on, the Primal and Lily fought side by side, their movements synchronized and precise. They could see the fatigue and frustration in the patrol's ranks. The tide was turning, and the survivors began to gain the upper hand. With a final push, the group managed to drive the patrol back. The remaining enemy forces retreated, their vehicles damaged and their morale shattered. The survivors, though exhausted and battered, stood victorious. The Primal let out a triumphant roar, a signal of their hard-fought victory. As dawn broke and the first light of morning illuminated the battlefield, Lily and the Primal surveyed the aftermath. The city was scarred, but the immediate threat had been repelled. The survivors, though weary, were filled with a renewed sense of hope. The battle had been a turning point. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. With the patrols driven off, they could finally begin to rebuild and reclaim their lives. The final battle had not only secured their safety, but had also cemented their bond as allies and friends, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. The city lay in ruins, the aftermath of the final battle evident in the damaged buildings and scattered debris. Yet, as dawn's first light illuminated the devastation, a new sense of hope emerged among the survivors. The threat of the patrols had been vanquished, and a new chapter was ready to begin. Lily, the Primal, and their group of survivors stood amidst the remnants of their hard-fought victory. They were tired, their faces marked with the strain of battle, but there was a renewed energy in their eyes. The victory had given them not just a reprieve, but a chance to build something better. The survivors began the task of clearing the debris and assessing the damage to their base. Despite the exhaustion, there was a sense of purpose in their work. They moved with a determination born from the realization that they had reclaimed their future. Lily and the Primal worked side by side, their bond stronger than ever. The Primal's skills in repair and fortification were invaluable as he helped rebuild and reinforce the damaged structures. Lily coordinated the group's efforts, ensuring that everyone had a role and that their resources were used effectively. In the days that followed, the survivors set about transforming their base into a more livable and secure place. They repaired the damage, organized their supplies, and began to establish a new order. The once abandoned building was becoming a symbol of their resilience and hope. The Primal's presence continued to be a source of strength. He took on a leadership role, guiding the group with his experience and insight. His ability to inspire and protect became a cornerstone of their new community. The survivors respected and admired him, recognizing his pivotal role in their survival. Lily, too, found her place within the group. She became a key figure in organizing efforts and fostering a sense of unity. Her courage and leadership during the battle had earned her the trust and respect of the others. She and the Primal worked together to create a plan for the future, focusing on rebuilding and expanding their new home. As they settled into their new routine, the survivors began to dream of what lay ahead. They talked about the possibility of reaching out to other survivors, of rebuilding connections with the wider world, and of creating a community where they could thrive rather than merely survive. The hope for a better future was palpable. One evening, as the sun set and the sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, Lily and the Primal sat on the rooftop of their newly fortified base. They looked out over the city, the damage from the battle evident, but the promise of a new beginning clear. Lily turned to the Primal, a smile on her face. "We've come a long way. It's hard to believe how much we've accomplished." The Primal's response was a soft, satisfied growl. He nodded, his gaze filled with a sense of accomplishment and optimism. "We did it together," Lily continued. "This is just the beginning. We have a chance to build something new, something better." The Primal's eyes gleamed with determination. He placed a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and support. Together they looked forward to the future, their spirits buoyed by the promise of new possibilities. The survivors had faced immense challenges and emerged victorious. The final battle had marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. With their combined strength, courage, and hope, they were ready to embrace the future and build a new world from the ashes of the old. In the quiet of the evening, as the city slowly began to heal, Lily and the Primal knew that their journey was far from over. But they were prepared to face whatever came next, united in their resolve to create a better tomorrow. The new beginning was not just a promise, it was a reality they were determined to make come true.